When I was a kid/early teenager, I had a pretty hardcore werewolf/wolf phase. They were my favorite animal, and I searched for everything I could find about them or their supernatural cousins. Also, I have autism, but I don't know if that's relevant and maybe influenced my interests in any way. As you can imagine, I love the Balto movies and all nature documentaries featuring Arctic wolves. And just about every werewolf media, I could find how I even gravitated towards the werewolves in the Halloween specials, even when they weren't the main focus of the episode. A conversation I had with a friend recently really put it into perspective for me. I had a big wearable phase you get the point. As much as I was obsessed with this one specific thing though, I could never really find anyone I can talk about them with on my level. That's when my friend showed me Ongle, an online anonymous chat room that I could talk to anyone about anything on. We did this at a sleepover when the host parents went to bed, which behind hindsight was kind of a bad idea. We didn't really play it safe at all. Not that we cared at that time being 13. And all on the main screen, they had the start chat button, and the button to type in different categories. That way, if you wanted to chat with someone about a specific topic, users online would be filtered. And a potential match. You might have typed something similar would come up. Of course, I tried typing in werewolves and hit chat. I remember the first chance being something non-eventful like MF. I love werewolves. Cool. What's your favorite werewolf movie? Stranger has disconnected their head or people being very horny. I wasn't discouraged though. All my friends got bored and moved on to watching a movie. I sat on the floor next to them going through as many chats as possible, looking for someone I could really connect with. It was when they were all getting ready to go to bed that something promising came up. The person immediately started talking about some of the Discovery Special zine scene and seemed very enthusiastic as well. Pretty soon we chatted nonstop for over an hour going back and forth on our favorite tropes. Eventually, though, they asked what state I lived in. I didn't really know how I felt about this, because they were a stranger on the internet. But then I reasoned they liked werewolves, and they hadn't been weird up to this point. Most importantly, they didn't know what I looked like, or even what part of my state I lived in. I thought it would be okay to tell them. I told them the state I occupied, and the floodgates opened immediately. Messages flooded the chat screen one right after the other, as if they couldn't contain themselves anymore. Where do you live in that state? Can I come visit you? We can dress up together for Halloween. Please tell me, where do you live? What's your name? What do you look like? I freaked out and closed on Megail. After that I felt overwhelmed and stressed out and decided that had been a bad idea and I should go to bed instead. I curled up into my sleeping bag, put my phone face down on the floor, and then drifted off anxiously, if that's possible. I didn't mention what happened last night to any of my friends, mostly out of sheer embarrassment. I didn't say anything to my mom or dad either. They would kill me if they knew I was going on the internet to talk with strangers, and was also hesitant to go on Omegle again after, which probably is for the best. In hindsight, maybe the person was just overexcited like I was to talk with someone who really shared their interest. Looking back with the switch from 0 to 100 to meet up though, I don't think that was the only reason the whole incident didn't stop my obsession now. That Halloween, I wasn't looking for the perfect costume. I was kind of hoping I'd meet someone else who loved them just as much as I did while trick-or-treating in a less stressful, less weird sort of way. Eventually, I did find what I was looking for. It was a full werewolf costume with a brown furred mask and a jaw that moved when you talked, gloves made to look like clawed hands and ripped to one clothing like the classic movies. Absolutely perfect for my purposes. My friends and I still loved to go out trick-or-treating at that point. So we decided to go together. We lived in a pretty populated neighborhood at the time, which meant a lot of houses and a lot of good costumes, and also meant a lot of candy as well. I liked it for most of the night. But right as we were about to start heading home, I noticed another guy in a werewolf costume walking behind us. He was tall, gangly, and with a black wolf's head with these reflective glassy eyes, kind of like a real wolf, and tried to get a better look through my mind. asks I hauls, but it wasn't working too good. All I could see was that this guy wasn't trying to catch up with us or get our attention. Specifically, he was just kind of meandering behind us with no clear intention. This time I mentioned it to my friends, who suggested we take the shorter way home. We duck between two houses to head back to mine, but the man in the wolf mask didn't seem to mind our little detour. In fact, he really picked up the pace as we walked through the yard. One of my friends realized he was trying to cut us off on the other side and panicked, pulling me and our other friend along with her into somebody's private bushes. The leaves scratched up my arms, but the rubber masks kept my face safe. At least we hunkered down, not moving a muscle. I can't remember if I was even breathing. I peeked through a gap in the bush. The man in the mask came around the other side and paused, panting as if he were out of breath. It was surreal, as though I were in my very own horror movie. I was not enjoying this in the slightest. And that's when the wolf mask turned our way. Its glassy eyes reflected a sickly yellow from the street light. The way they seemed to pierce directly into me, while still looking completely dead, was the worst part. I didn't know how well the man could actually see out of this thing, given the trouble I was having with my own. But if he couldn't see us at all, he didn't show it. Instead, the man simply turned away and walked off into the night. His shoulders shook as if he were laughing, or possibly incredibly angry. My friends and I waited for what seemed like hours in that bush to make sure he was really God. When we felt for sure that the coast was clear, we sprinted out and made our way back to my house. I found comfort in my mask, even as we careened through the dark streets. My parents were confused when we told them what happened, but told us to stay inside for the rest of the night. They seemed to think that it was an older kid playing a prank on us. Honestly, that's probably what I think till still, though. My mind flashes back to that weird uncle conversation I had a short time previously. Logically, I know there's probably no way it could be the same creepy person, barring a huge coincidence. But the idea of the person being weird to me online, finding me out in the open, is a chilling thought. So I'm sort of addicted to Snapchat. I'd send hundreds of snaps a day to my girlfriends, even if we were in the same room together. Anything that keep up a streak with somebody, might even accepted friends of friends, not people I explicitly knew myself, but not complete strangers either. And I figured that was still staying within the bounds of safety. When my friends suggested we play a game they invented called Snapchat Scavenger Hunt, I was instantly, and they said the rules of the game involve sending a prompt to all your Snapchat followers, asking them to give you hints to a random place or object. Then you'd have to snap them a video or a photo to prove you'd found the right one. It sounded like a lot of fun. We made plans for a Saturday drive around to find everything we possibly could in a single day. I'd put some message out there like, "Hey, give us some objects to find, bitches," and that was that. We got a few requests actually. A red fire hydrant, specific small business, a scenic pond. It was turning out better than expected, and these fabulous results urged the four of us to keep going. Then we got a private request from someone nine didn't really know that well. A cousin of mine's boyfriend had told us to find a remote property somewhere off Route 1. Just look for the moose, you route, you'll get a real neat surprise. We were instantly intrigued and promptly drove up and down Route 1 searching. My boyfriend didn't say which direction or even how far along to go. So we drove about as far as we were comfortable, scanning the roadsides for whatever moose he was talking about. Eventually, we had to ask for an additional clue since we'd been at this for more than an hour. At this point, we were getting a little bit tired and wanted to find this surprise quickly. Cousin's boyfriend was very quick to respond, telling us that we'd see a remote dirt drive to the right, and then I wouldn't carved a moose statue on the side of the road. And the surprise would be right at the end of that drive. Mall. Sure enough, we did eventually discover a narrow dirt drive that turned sharply off the road and into a thick blanket of trees. One of my friends, that driver, was starting to get a bad feeling about this. None of our other targets had been in such remote areas like this. And to top it off, we didn't even have a clear idea what we were looking for. Off to the side, kind of nestled into the trees, we did see a large sloppily carved wooden moose. That was kind of cool, I guess, but it looked unfinished. And with how much this guy was hyping it up, it better be a great surprise. After some debate, we went further down. Dead leaves and branches crunched under our tires as we went, and we slowed down for comfort. We tried to make some jokes to calm ourselves. But the further we went from the road, the more isolated it became. And the more unsettled we all felt. Suddenly, I got the strangest feeling. It just hit me all at once like a punch to the gut that radiated through my entire body. I immediately thought to myself, we need to get the fuck out of here. I'm not one to ignore my gut, especially if the feeling is this strong. I told my friends what I was thinking, and the one driving the car agreed this was too sketchy to be fun anymore. We made a plan to turn around at the end of the road since it was too narrow to do so anywhere else. When we got to the end of that lonely drive, my friend immediately stopped the car. "Hey, there's someone out there." Sure enough, laying in the middle of the small clearing at the very end was what looked to be a guy in a gray hoodie. He was face down, his arms and legs were sprawled out, and he looked to be either asleep or unconscious. That feeling twisted in the pit of my stomach. No matter what was going on here, we needed to go. One of my friends suggested we see if he was okay. But everyone else vetoed that. The driver inched carefully around the guy so as to not run him over and turned around. We didn't waste any time speeding off. In the back window, I saw the guy immediately get up and look out after us. He didn't say anything. Didn't try to catch up at all. He just stared as we left. That's when I knew we were being led into some kind of trap. Whether it was to rob us, carjack us, or worse, I don't know. I texted my cousin, obviously angry, and asking her what the hell her boyfriend was trying to pull. It took a few minutes for her to get back to me. But her reply was shocking. Apparently her boyfriend had lost his phone a couple of days ago and did not have it password protected, meaning that whoever had grabbed it, and access to every one of his social media accounts, including his Snapchat. I guess when this person saw my shoutout, they thought they could set up some nefarious scheme to catch us unawares, and we wouldn't know what was happening until it was too late. And the guy probably had more waiting for us in those woods. If one of us had gotten out to help him, it would have ended very, very badly, I imagine. Needless to say, I'm a lot more careful with who follows my Snapchat. Unblocked the hacked account for my cousin's boyfriend and made sure it was absolutely him before I friend him again. Oh, and we never played Snapchat scavenger hunt again. I didn't get Instagram until late in 2019. I never really had the urge. All my friends used Messenger, and I was fine sticking with that. When I learned how big a part social media can play in building a platform for a writer, though, I decided to set one up that was strictly a business account. It's always been my dream to become an author. So I had various accounts around for when I got something published, promote book, cover art, cover the writing process, where to buy the book, things like that. That's not exactly what happened, though. I mean, I'm still saving that account for what I wanted it to be. But then people in college started wanting to add me as a friend. At that point, I let them. It became sort of another messenger, however, but also used my real first and last name on this account, and a picture of myself as well. So people who wanted to look me up could easily find me. I learned that that could be used for both good and bad purposes. I remember I was sitting in class one day, when I got a message from somebody. I couldn't check my phone right at that moment. I waited until a brief break in the lessons so I could quietly slip off to the bathroom for a moment. As soon as I pulled up the screen, I saw I'd received a photo with no text from a name I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I nearly dropped my phone in surprise. It was a picture of me sitting in class that very day. It had been taken from the doorway behind me. I could even see myself in the image doodling in my notebook to focus. My back was hunched over my desk, but it was clearly me, my oversized sweater, my jeans, my hot chocolate, and my very obvious purple bag. I stood in front of the sink for a few minutes trying to rack my brain as to who would do something like this. No one I knew was the pranking type, really, at least not to this level. I also didn't think someone would randomly try to scam you like this without a good reason. I tried generally not to get in other people's business, so I couldn't really think of who it could possibly be. Class resumed and not long later, so I decided to put it out of my mind and figure it out. Later, I asked my roommate, but they didn't know anything about it either. I believed him because he was barely going to his own classes, let alone stalking mine. Over the next few days, I continued to receive more messages from this unknown person. Always photos of me taken from a distance sitting in class, again across the dining hall, once even in the downtown area near campus. At that point, I was really starting to freak out. I was considering going to the Public Safety Committee when the incidents just suddenly and abruptly stopped altogether. I still don't know who it was to this day. I know maybe this doesn't sound too scary compared to other stories you might have heard. But let me tell you this, having a stranger take photos of you and not being able to know who or why ever is quite harrowing.